Hey, what's up, guys? Now that we've had a bit of time to play and to test patch 1.07, I want to go back over all the recent changes. So, like, we had time to experience what the patch had to offer. We had time to test a bunch of things. It's always one thing to look at the patch notes and theory craft, like, what would be or what are the impacts of all the changes, but it's another to see for yourself like what these do in practice. And so now that we've had the time to deal with all of this and to digest and try out all these new things, I want to give you guys my thought on what the patch did right, what are the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there's a lot of good. Actually, there's a lot of good, but there is an ugly change. So I'm sure you guys will already have guessed what the ugly change is, but let's start though with the good. Like, there's actually a lot to go over. This patch really did a lot of things right, and it did a lot of things right of stuff we asked for, like textbook stuff that we wanted, like literally, like something like increasing the guard break power of the kick. Like, now the kick can guard break pretty much anything. The only thing during my testing that the kick did not guard break was a fingerprint two-handed with shield talisman and fingerprint with shield grease. Even a barricaded fingerprint could be guard broken with the hammer talisman. So like, changes like that, we love to see this. This is exactly what we wanted. Another one, like, of the very, very big change that came with the patch is poise. So the changes to poise are actually pretty damn good across the board. Like, there's really, I would say there's only one instance where the poise was adjusted improperly for the weapons that they changed, because I think they just straight up increased the poise across the board. So I'm gonna say it in the bad section, which weapon got hit and that should not have gotten the poise increase. But for now, like, the weapons like great swords, scythes, halberds, like being able to break like pretty much anything two-handed, it's really a nice addition. Like, a lot of these are extremely good changes, and it makes for, like, it makes for more variety in terms of weapons that are viable. So there's really some good changes that are poise related. There's also some Ash of Wars that have had a poise increase. Like, I was testing recently, a spin slash for fast weapon actually always poise breaks. So you can pretty much have a poise break option on like a Shemshir, so you can make fast curve sword viable. Not only that, speaking of other Ash of War, Cragblade also got a buff. So Cragblade does now 20% poise damage increase. So you can make some really cool poise combination of weapons with that. So I really like these changes. Like, the poise direction that they took, they really listened to the feedback, and we honestly have to tip our hat to both Bandai Namco for sharing our information with From Software, and for From Software for implementing it. So huge fucking W here. Speaking of other huge W, status. The footage you're gonna see here, you're gonna see status is not dead, guys. Like, I've seen people, like, saying that status is dead now. No, status is actually still pretty strong. It's actually balanced. I would say, like, status, they hit it like perfect. Like, in my opinion, the way they did status with that patch, they reduced it enough so that a lot of status weapons are still very viable. It's just that you have to work for your status. It's not free anymore. Like, before, it was pretty much free. You could get it in sometimes 1 or 2 hits. So they really made status just right, in my opinion. Like, if you make a proper status build, you will still do just fine. It's just that you won't status people in 1 or 2 hits anymore. But yeah, I'm really happy with what they did with the status. You'll see, actually, again, in the footage, I get a lot of kills off proccing the bleed here on my side, using the grease too. So really nice. You can even do like more build-up. Like, I've tested some dual wielding, so they nerf status for dual wield weapons, like Frost Infusion and stuff like that. Before you could get, like, say, a Frost proc on like 2 L1s for straight swords. Now you have to work for it and get 3 L1s instead. So, small difference, but in gameplay it makes it a lot more balanced. So again, really happy with the way they did status. I think they really they really put the nail on it. Moving on, let's go to another of the big change that they made, a positive one, the damage. So they hit all like the damage across the board like we initially asked like a long time ago, like our suggestion and pretty much the community suggestion was to hit the damage across the board by 30%, and they exactly did it by 30%. Like we even had a vid on it earlier where we talked about like all the PvP problem, and we stipulated in that vid that the game needed a 30% damage nerf, and it actually got exactly that. And long and behold, the damage I think is in a very, very good spot, and let me explain you why. Well, some people wanted a very heavy damage nerf where, you know, it was the time to kill was a lot longer. But the thing is, it gets very dangerous when you start to take the damage down too much, because it's hard to actually finish kills when you're invading. In duels, it can work, but even in duels, sometimes fight can last very long too. So the time to kill now still has the same identity as it had before, where you can still get some 2-shots on the right build, but you're gonna have to work for your build if you want the 2-shot. 1-shots are a lot harder to do, and like it's not like before where everything could 1-shot. So 1-shots much harder to pull off. I've not tried a 1-shot build. I'm sure you could still pull it off, but you're gonna have to work a lot for, you know, find buffs and like stacking buffs to make sure whatever you're using 1-shots, but it's gonna be much harder to 1-shot. So that's a very good one. Another good thing that they did was regarding blocking and shields in general. They did reduce the amount of hits like across the board that it takes to break guards. So I think the way blocking is now is in a much better spot. Although I'm gonna talk about shield poking though in the bad section, because shield poking is still broken. So the blocking, they did it right. I think they touched blocking right. You now have more options to break guard. You now have weapons that do more poise damage against guard, or stamina damage, I should say. And you also have spells that do more stamina damage against guard. So those are all very nice changes. I'm really happy with those. They also did a lot of good things with the spells, in a sense that a lot of spells had like a speed increase. Some of them got poise damage increase and like recovery, even sometimes like an extra hitbox for some attacks. That's also true for Ash of Wars. And also like stuff like a great auricular bubble, you know, like increased attack power, increased tracking, increased stamina damage. Like those are good changes. We like that. Although, to be fair, the spells, again, not all good. Like, there's some bad things that came with the patch as well, spell-wise, which we're going to talk about soon. But, again, in the good stuff, I like that they added more active time for a lot of Ash of Wars that buff your weapons. So, like, buffs like Warcry, for instance, last longer. Buff like Poison Mist and, like, Frost Mist, whatever it's called. And those lasting longer make a lot more sense in the sense that, you know, you don't need to constantly reapply it mid-fight. So nice little detail. Same thing with Cragblade. Cragblade was one that really needed to last longer because Cragblade takes a long time to cast too, so you can't really do it mid-fight. So stuff like that we really like. Really a lot of good stuff, like significant changes, like significant good stuff. Also, Ash of Wars that got sped up to the point where there might actually be like a lot more usable in fights. So, like stuff like Piercing Fang being like a lot faster than before. You know, it's still very dodgeable, but it's fast enough to where it could be used against someone with a brain if you mix it up with something else. Obviously, it's not free and it's not good, but it's usable now. Before, I would not have even put it in the category of usable. In the same vein, Impelling Thrust, definitely usable. It got faster as well, and it also poise breaks any poise. So it's really nice to have something like Impaling Thrust, poise breaking like any poise, so that you can put that on any weapon you have and have an option to poise break someone. So it makes it so that you can sort of make any weapon that you want viable against someone that has max poise, for instance. So really good changes in that regard. I'm very, very happy with those. And all around, I'd say the patch really did a lot of major changes right, and that's what's most important, because you know, the damage and the poise was in some of the stuff I was most worried about, because those are tricky changes. But I think they did those. I think they nailed, for the most part, those two changes right. So again, very, very good, and I'm very happy, and I'm looking forward to the next patch, because this gives me a lot of hope. Okay, so now though, the bad stuff, you know, that's what you guys are here for, because you guys all want to know like what's bad with the patch. Well, let's start with something that they did not change and did not touch, which was kind of our first thing on our radar. Like the thing that we wanted to see changes the most was shield poking. That was what we asked for the most after Bloodhound Step, and then Bloodhound Step got nerfed. I mean, you could argue that the damage, the poise, the status, like we wanted those changes pretty bad too. So maybe it's unfair to say that, but shield poking is definitely something that we had on top of our list as far as broken stuff goes. They did give us options, more options to guard break, and they did nerf the guard for shields. I think that's very good, honestly, like what they did with the guard and shield breaking in one kick, but there is definitely something bad to be said about these though. Like I was fighting with some good player, and I was shield poking, you know, people trying their hardest, some very good players actually, and trying to kick the shield like constantly, and my man did not even manage to land a single kick. And it's not like I play shield poke like for a living, like I barely ever touch it, and it was extremely difficult to guard break a good player with the kick. So the kick is definitely not a counter to a good player shield poking, unfortunately. So the kick is not the solution that is going to fix shield poking. I think the fact that the kick exists and it can guard break anyone will be good for like anyone that is not like an amazing player. Like it will give a good option for pretty much the majority of the player base, I would say actually. So the majority of the player base is going to be fine with this. But when it comes to players that know a bit more of what they're doing, you'll find that shield poking is still ridiculously oppressive, and I think there should still be a shield poking should still be addressed. But I'm not just going to say shield poking needs to be addressed without giving a solution. There's two types of solution we can go about fixing shield poking. First one is to play with the recovery time of a shield poke. So if you increase the recovery after a shield poke, you're gonna leave a window of opportunity for a backstab and for people to outmaneuver the shield poke. And that's I would say that's even more important with stuff like fast rapiers, because those are the least punishable out of the shield pokes, whereas stuff like Great Spear shield poke already has enough of a good recovery to be manageable, but still even like trusting swords are hard to deal with. Like you'd still probably add some recovery across the board to all shield poking, but especially the fast thrusting sword shield poke. So that's definitely something that needs to be addressed, as shield poking is still ridiculously strong, and I would say ridiculously broken too. Another solution would be to increase stability damage against shield poking while the shield poke user is in the action of shield poking, kind of like what they did in Dark Souls 3. Another bad thing related to poise, the one weapon that got touched by poise that has a bad outcome, I would say, is the rapier, or a two-handed rapier to be more exact. So before 1.07, the two-handed rapier was already one of the very best weapon in the game, and it got even stronger by giving it like some ridiculous amount of poise damage. So two-handed rapier has no business doing that much poise damage, as two-handed rapiers already do like nasty damage. Like you do like really high damage with rapiers in this game, especially two-handed. So the fact that it also poise breaks very, very fast, like in 2 hits, and sometimes 1 hit depending on the attack, like that's very, very dangerous. You have to keep in mind that rapiers are the fastest weapons in the game, and they're also very long and they do a lot of damage. So the fact that it has a lot of poise damage on top of it is definitely overkill. So they have to be careful about that. Like, looking at the poise sheet I made, if you want to check out all the new poise breakpoint, I made a vid about this, like showcasing all the new poise breakpoint. But all in all, I think the rapier class should actually share the same poise value as the dagger class, as they're both pretty fast weapons, yet the rapier is better than the dagger in pretty much every way except the critical damage. So I think, like, if you give the rapier the same poise damage as the dagger, you're actually putting the rapier in the same place it was before 1.07, so you're making it pretty much on par with what it always was, which was already like one of the very best weapons. So this nerf is not going to make two-handed rapiers bad, quite the opposite. It's just a slight nerf, a very minimal nerf, I might say. Even it's a minimal nerf for how strong the weapon is, but it's a nerf that would go a long way to be able to deal with a rapier playstyle, which is by far the most oppressive right now. Again, keeping on with some of the bad changes, Bestial Slaying did get some. They touched it a bit. It got a slight nerf, but it did not get. I put it in the bad because it really did not get nerfed like nearly enough. I was doing some testing yesterday, and Bestial Slaying, like at point blank, will still poise break like over 100 poise, which is absolutely ridiculous for how fast and how easy it is to cast Bestial Sling, and you can even make it do a lot of damage. So very dangerous to to have a Bestial Sling build still. So Bestial Sling, I think, still needs to be touched. It needs less poise damage. That's really what it comes down to. Poise damage on Bestial Sling is still too high, because it's one of those attacks that's just like ridiculously fast and easy to land. And it just makes it so that you have to wait forever, because as soon as the opponent spams Bestial Sling, because it has low recovery, like if you do a range attack back yourself, they have time to roll out of it, and if you attack through it, well, they're gonna poise break you, so you're likely gonna get hit too. And that's even more of a problem once you get to higher level, because everyone has max casting speed, so those Bestial Slings are even more difficult to deal with as you go up the level chart. So Bestial Sling's still another one that needs to be addressed. It's still pretty brain dead, and it needs a poise damage decrease. But another bad one, this one is a bit more iffy. Like, I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, because it covers like a very broad number of spells, actually. So a lot of spells got damage increase and also FP consumption decrease. And for some spells, it was actually a good addition. Like, some spells kind of needed that, but like Great Auricular Bubble, for instance, you know, that was completely trash. So all the buffs that it got, it didn't make it OP. I can tell you that much. Like, I was trying it out. I tested it earlier yesterday, and it's not OP, but it's still bad. I would even say, like, it's still bad, but it got to a point where, you know, you could probably use it in Invasion and get some kills and have fun with it. So it's still possible to have fun with it, so that's good. But on the bad side, like some spells, some of the Comet spells, you know, decreasing the FP consumption, making it more spammable and deal more damage. Like in Invasion, like that shit is straight up cancer. You know, the Comet and these spells were already doing a lot of damage, so the damage addition that they gave it was, I think, unnecessary and not necessarily a good way to buff these spells. What they did right buffing some of these spells was increasing the casting speed on some of them, giving some of the spells an extra hitbox. Those are good ways to make spells better, in my opinion, not necessarily increasing the damage or you know, even making it more spammable. This is not how you're gonna make mages better. It's just gonna be more frustrating for both parties, as the spells are still bad, but you know, it has more one-shot potential, which was a problem we wanted fixed anyway. So this covers pretty much the bad stuff that's been that went on this patch. So there's definitely, like, as you notice, there's a lot less stuff, and it's a lot more specific than the good thing. Like, the good changes like are very broad and very important, whereas the bad stuff is more nitpicky, right? So definitely not a bad thing. Now though, let's talk about the ugly, and it's Endure, obviously. So the way they changed Endure was this is like horrible, like actually fucking cancer. I don't know who decided to do this, because I'm gonna tell you right now, no one asked for this. And not only did no one ask for this, Endure was already one of the best Ash of War in the entire game. It's just that not a lot of people used it because, you know, they didn't want to use it because it's kind of boring to spam Endure all the time. But now they made it so it lasts so long that it's completely oppressive to the point where it's very hard to deal with. And so for those of you who don't know, specifically the Endure went from lasting 3 seconds to now 5 seconds. That's a huge difference in terms of gameplay though, but there's not just that. Like, another big change that was a big L for Endure was that they actually lowered the recovery for which you are able to roll out after doing Endure. So what does that mean is that if someone endures, the person is going to have a much shorter time to punish it, because you can, like, the Endure player can actually roll out of their own Endure faster than they could before. So you Endure, the person tries to punish the Endure, you roll out, you don't get hit, and then you still have about 4 seconds of complete not invulnerability, but complete, you know, unstagger ability, that you can't get staggered for pretty much 4 seconds, and you get free pressure after that, and the other person is forced to literally run away. So it makes for some very, very boring fights and unskilled fight as well. Honestly, like, very bad change. Like, this is probably on the level of stupidness of Bloodhound Step pre-patch. Like, whoever thought this was a good idea, I'm sorry, man, but really, really bad. Like, the Endure change was absolutely horrible. Like, I think, you know, if I try to play Devil Advocate, I think they tried to make like lighter armor builds or maybe fashion builds more viable in that way, but in practice this really only favors high defense builds more than, you know, high fashion builds, because if one player endures and the other player endures, the person who has higher defense is going to come out on top, and by a lot, because it becomes a DPS race. Like, these Endure thing mean that it's the person who's doing the most damage the fastest that's going to come out on top. So weapons that are fast and do a lot of damage, like, benefit a lot from Endure. So really it boosts the already strong meta. Like, the meta weapons got boosted by Endure, not the bad weapons, and the meta armor got boosted by the Endure, not the fashion. So very bad change overall. This is definitely the thing we want fixed the most. They should revert it to the way it was before, as there was actually no issue with Endure and it was actually balanced. If they want to buff Endure, what they should have done is give faster Endure for the bigger weapons, whereas before 1.07, Endure was faster on small weapons than big weapons. So, like, if you had a big colossal weapon and you endured with it, you didn't have time to do anything after the Endure. So that was an issue for big weapons, whereas the small weapons had time to do something because the Endure didn't last, or the Endure animation didn't last as long. So if they want to buff it, they should reduce the recovery only for doing Endure with the big weapon, but it should really stay at 3 seconds. Endure doesn't need to have a 5-second fucking infinite poise. Like, that is just ridiculous. And also, they also made it so status cannot stun the Endure anymore. So really, your only way to dealing with Endure is getting a headshot, and I'll tell you right now, good luck with that. So yeah, guys, I think I went over every single changes, like major changes, relevant changes that the patch 1.07 brought. So this is my impression of 1.07 in detail. In conclusion though, extremely good, like really, really good patch. But again, it's never perfect, but it's fine. We don't expect patches to be perfect. We're very happy that they're listening to the community. We appreciate the work that they've done to me, like, this is a massive good sign that they're listening to the community feedback and that the game is absolutely going in the right direction. And that makes me excited for the future, which I have to say I was not excited before. I was actually pretty grim on the future of Elden Ring, but seeing a patch like this that addresses so many issues, it makes you feel like all the public opinion that we put out there, you know, all the complaining was worth something. You know, we actually got what we wanted, and I am so grateful for all the changes that they implemented. Again, there's still work to be done, but sincerely happy with what we got so far. So I hope you guys enjoyed this piece, and I'll catch you guys up next time. Take care, guys.